reactor and exited from the covered opening. Nitrogen is invisible, but it is colored light green here for illustration. Workers had attached a sign reading, "Danger, confined space, do not enter without permit." However, there were no specific warnings posted about the nitrogen hazard. A crew of Matrix contract workers had received a Valero-issued permit to reinstall the pipe elbow. The safe work permit did not warn the crew that the reactor was filled with nitrogen. In fact, the permit stated, quote, "Nitrogen purge NA, not applicable." Two contract workers removed the plywood cover and cleaned the ledge around the opening. At about that time, a third worker noticed a roll of duct tape lying 5 feet down inside the reactor. This presented the crew with a problem. The tape would cause the reactor to fail Valero's cleanliness inspection, and they would not be allowed to reinstall the elbow until it was removed. However, entering the reactor to remove the tape would require obtaining a specially trained and equipped crew and a confined space entry permit from Valero. That process would take many hours and delay the installation of the elbow, which was to be completed before the end of the night shift, now half over. In addition, the crane needed for lifting the 5-ton elbow into place had just become available for a short period. To avoid the long delay, one worker stood near the opening with a long, flexible wire and made several attempts to hook the tape. But he was unsuccessful. What seemed like an easy task just wasn't working. Most likely, the worker then got closer by sitting on the ledge of the opening with his legs dangling inside. But he still could not remove the tape. Based on the evidence, the CSB developed 2 possible scenarios for what happened next. In the first scenario, the worker lowered himself into the reactor to quickly grab the tape, relying on his foreman nearby to insert a ladder so he could climb back out. But after lowering himself into the reactor, he inhaled the nearly pure nitrogen inside. Deprived of oxygen, he quickly collapsed. In the second scenario, the worker on the ledge leaned over the opening trying to get closer to the tape. At that point, he either accidentally slipped into the reactor or he breathed in the oxygen-deficient atmosphere just above the opening, lost consciousness, and slid in. What happened next added to the tragedy. An eyewitness saw the foreman and the contract administrator peering into the reactor. The stricken worker was lying unconscious inside. The foreman quickly inserted the ladder into the reactor and climbed down to help his fellow worker. But without a breathing apparatus, he too collapsed from the lack of oxygen. The contract administrator declared an emergency on his radio. Valero operators then sounded the unit alarm. When company emergency responders arrived a short time later, they saw both victims lying motionless inside the reactor. A handheld meter inserted through the opening showed less than 1% oxygen, a lethal atmosphere. Wearing supplied air breathing equipment, the responders entered the reactor. A rescue hoist was used to remove the workers. It was now almost 10 minutes since the first worker had collapsed. Attempts to revive the men were unsuccessful, and both were later pronounced dead at the hospital. The CSB believes the 2 workers died within a few minutes of entering the nitrogen-filled reactor. This